Contact bearing 270, range 4 million kilometers and closing fast. Lieutenant Torres's voice cracked through the bridge speakers, cutting through the monotonous hum of mining operations reports that had been Commander Thane Revik's morning soundtrack. Revik's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. In 18 months of commanding the Kepler 442b Colonial Defense Grid, the most exciting contact had been a rogue asteroid fragment. His fingers found the comm panel before his brain fully processed the implications. Torres, confirm that reading. Are we talking debris field or something else? Sir, I'm showing 3 distinct signatures, each one's roughly the size of our main habitat dome, and they're decelerating from interstellar velocity. This isn't natural. The coffee went cold in Revik's grip as ice formed in his stomach. He'd spent 7 years in the Colonial Defense Force before accepting this assignment, and every instinct screamed that peaceful first contact scenarios belonged in training simulations, not reality. Real space was filled with predators, and humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy by establishing mining colonies in 12 systems. All stations, general quarters. Get me Chief Engineer Delane and Defense Coordinator Walsh in the Situation Room. Now. Revik's voice carried the weight of command, but beneath it lay something he hadn't felt since the Titan Rebellion, genuine fear for the lives under his protection. The Situation Room's displays flickered to life as Marcus Delane burst through the door, still wearing his mining suit coveralls, quantum dust coating his sleeves. Behind him, Defense Coordinator Patricia Walsh moved with the measured precision of a career military officer, her expression already calculating threat assessments. What are we looking at, Thane? Delane's weathered face bore the permanent squint of a awed man who'd spent decades staring into fusion cores. His voice carried the rough edge of someone more comfortable shouting over industrial machinery than discussing alien encounters. Revik gestured toward the main display where 3 elongated shapes grew larger with each sensor sweep. First contact, and they're not sending greeting cards. Look at those acceleration curves. They've been braking for hours, which means they planned this approach vector precisely. Walsh leaned forward, her fingers dancing across the tactical interface. Energy signatures are off the charts. Whatever's powering those vessels makes our fusion plants look like campfires. Her voice remained steady, but Revik caught the slight tremor that betrayed her underlying tension. Sir, our defensive capabilities against unknown technology are pathetic, Revik finished. 12 frigates with conventional missiles and kinetic weapons against vessels that size. We might as well throw rocks. He turned toward the communications station where static filled with structured patterns had begun emanating from the approaching ships. Torres, are you getting anything coherent from that signal? Working on it, sir. The computer's running pattern analysis now, but... Torres paused, his face paling as data streamed across his monitor. Commander, you need to see this. The signal's not just communication, it's a data package. Historical records, star charts, tactical summaries. It's like they want us to understand what we're facing. The decoded information painted a picture that made Revik's throat constrict. 73 star systems. Conquered populations numbering in the billions. A species called the Luminary Empire that had perfected warfare through technological dominance and psychological intimidation. The records showed planet after planet surrendering without firing a shot, their populations reloca, ting to designated zones while Luminari forces stripped entire systems of resources. They're sending us their resume, Walsh muttered, studying tactical analyses of previous Luminary conquests. Every species that fought them got obliterated. The ones that surrendered immediately got processed. Delane slammed his palm against the table, making the displays shake. 50,000 people live in this colony. We've got families, children, researchers who couldn't fight a mining drone, let alone alien warships. What kind of monsters announce their intentions like this? The kind that have never lost, Revik replied, watching as more data populated the screens. The Luminary military doctrine relied on orbital focusing arrays, massive constructs that concentrated stellar energy into devastating beam weapons. Their ships possessed something called photonic shielding that deflected most known weapon types. Worse, every conquered species had possessed technology comparable to or exceeding current human capabilities. The communication channel crackled to life with a voice that sounded like crystalline chimes arranged into words. Human colonial settlement of Kepler 442b. You have received documentation of Luminary Empire military capabilities and conquest protocols. You will prepare for administrative transition within 72 hours. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization. Compliance will ensure population survival and productive integration into Empire resource systems. Silence stretched through the Situation Room like a held breath. Outside the viewports, the mining platforms continued their work, massive industrial crawlers harvesting rare metals from asteroid fields, while their operators remained blissfully unaware that everything they'd built faced imminent destruction. How long to evacuate 50,000 people? Revik asked, though he already knew the answer. Our transport capacity tops out at 3,000 per run, Walsh replied. Even with round-the-clock operations and perfect conditions, we'd need weeks. And that's assuming they let us leave. Delane's expression shifted from anger to something resembling desperate calculation. Thane, look at these technical readouts. They're photonic systems. They're incredibly sophisticated. But sophisticated means complex. Complex means vulnerable to disruption if you know where to hit them. You're suggesting we fight? Walsh's tone suggested Delane had proposed attacking the sun with a slingshot. I'm suggesting we think. Delane pulled up schematics of the approaching vessels. These focusing arrays they require precise electromagnetic calibration. Our mining operations generate massive amounts of metallic particulates as waste product. Electromagnetic interference could disrupt their targeting systems. Revik felt something shift in his chest. Not hope exactly, but the absence of total despair. What kind of disruption are we talking about? Theoretical at best, Delane admitted. But we've got industrial-grade fusion equipment, millions of tons of metallic waste, and a mining fleet designed to move massive payloads. If we could create an electromagnetic storm around their vessels, they'd still have overwhelming firepower, Walsh interrupted. But maybe not overwhelming accuracy, Revik finished, his mind already racing through tactical possibilities. The Luminary expected either immediate surrender or futile conventional resistance. They wouldn't anticipate industrial sabotage disguised as defensive preparations. Through the viewports, construction lights began appearing around the alien vessels as orbital focusing arrays took shape with frightening speed. Somewhere in the colony below, children played in hydroponic gardens while their parents worked shifts that might be their last. The weight of 50,000 lives pressed against Rias, Vic's chest like atmospheric pressure. Patch me through to all department heads, he ordered. We're not surrendering, and we're not evacuating. We're going to teach these Lightbringers what darkness looks like. The engineering facility's emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across Marcus Delane's face as he hunched over the holographic display, his calloused fingers tracing energy patterns that could mean the difference between life and extinction. The air reeked of ozone and hot metal from overworked processors analyzing luminary vessel schematics, while the ventilation system struggled to keep pace with equipment running far beyond design specifications. There, look at that frequency modulation. Delane's voice carried the exhausted excitement of a man who'd been working for 18 straight hours. Their photonic weapons require constant recalibration every 4.7 seconds to maintain beam coherence. Miss that window, and the targeting matrix destabilizes. Revik leaned closer, feeling the heat radiating from the display projectors. His uniform clung to his back with nervous sweat, but his mind raced with possibilities. What kind of interference disrupts that calibration? Electromagnetic noise in the gigahertz range, specifically multispectrum bursts that shift faster than their systems can compensate. Delane pulled up another screen showing the colony's industrial output reports. Thane, we've been sitting on the solution for months without realizing it. Our mining operations produce titanium aluminum particles as waste byproduct, Millions of tons of the stuff we've been dumping into designated zones because it's too fine to recycle. The implications hit Revik like a physical blow. Metallic particles create electromagnetic fields when exposed to energy sources. Exactly. Deploy them in sufficient quantities around enemy vessels, then ignite them with industrial fusion torches, and you create low-caused electromagnetic storms that blind their targeting systems. Delane's weathered hands moved across the controls, bringing up cargo manifest reports. We've got 47 mining haulers, each capable of carrying 15,000 tons. If we convert the particulate storage silos into deployment systems, we turn our entire industrial infrastructure into a weapons platform, Revik finished. Through the facility's observation windows, he could see the first signs of luminary construction activities, brilliant points of light where their focusing arrays grew like malignant stars against the darkness of space. Each pulse of construction energy reminded him that time was bleeding away faster than he could stanch the wound. The facility doors burst open as Defense Coordinator Walsh strode in, her face grim with fresh intelligence. They're accelerating their timeline. Long-range sensors show 3 more luminary vessels entering the system's outer edge. Whatever we're planning needs to happen now. Delane cursed, a stream of profanity that would have impressed the roughest mining crews. Patricia, we need every available worker retrofitting cargo haulers with particle dispensers. The fabrication bays, the assembly platforms, every piece of industrial equipment that can cut, weld, or modify. You're talking about militarizing our entire civilian workforce, Walsh replied, but her tone suggested she'd already accepted the necessity. What about the defense fleet? Revik activated the colony-wide communications system, his voice echoing through every habitat module, workstation, and recreational facility. All department heads to primary conference room immediately. This is not a drill. He turned back to his companions. Our frigates can't penetrate their photonic shielding with conventional weapons, but close-range kinetic projectiles might punch through if their targeting systems are compromised. The next 6 hours transformed Kepler 442b from a peaceful mining colony into a fortress preparing for siege. In the main assembly bays, civilian engineers worked alongside military technicians, stripping mining equipment down to component parts and rebuilding them as weapons of war. The sound of industrial cutters shrieked through the air, while sparks from welding torches created constellations of light that reflected off workers' protective visors. Cargo hauler 79 modified and ready for deployment, reported Senior Engineer Yates, her voice hoarse from shouting orders over machinery noise. Particle dispensers installed, guidance systems calibrated, and fusion ignition sequence programmed. Revik watched from the observation deck as the first test deployment commenced. Cargo hauler Meridian launched from Bay 3, its hull groaning under the weight of concentrated metallic particles. Through the viewport, he could see the trail of glittering dust it left behind, each particle no larger than a grain of sand, but collectively representing humanity's desperate gamble against technological superiority. Thane, you need to see this. Delane's voice crackled through the comm system from the sensor array. The Luminary are repositioning their vessels. They've detected our particle deployments, and they're laughing at us. The intercepted transmission filled the command center with crystalline sounds that might have been alien amusement. Through the translation matrix, Admiral Soleth's voice carried condescending dismissal. Human defensive preparations noted. Primitive kinetic countermeasures will not affect Imperial photonic systems. Ultimatum deadline remains unchanged. They think we're throwing sand at starships, Walsh muttered, but Revik caught the satisfaction in her tone. Perfect. Let them underestimate us right up until the moment we prove them wrong. The first sign of luminary impatience came as pinpricks of brilliant light stabbing down from their focusing arrays. Military installations on the colony's surface erupted in flames as concentrated stellar energy found its targets with surgical precision. The communications tower vanished in a pillar of fire that left molten metal pooling where sophisticated equipment had stood moments before. They're conducting ranging shots, Torres reported from his rebuilt sensor station, testing their targeting accuracy before the main bombardment begins. Revik felt the weight of command crushing down on his shoulders as he watched another beam lance through the atmosphere, vaporizing a defensive satellite in a burst of superheated plasma. Somewhere in the colony below, families huddled in reinforced shelters while their children asked questions that had no comfortable answers. "All cargo haulers, begin full particle deployment now," he ordered. "Ignition sequence activates on my command." Through the viewports, dozens of mining vessels swarmed around the luminary fleet like insects surrounding giants. Each hauler released its cargo of metallic particles, creating expanding clouds of reflective dust that caught and scattered the alien vessels' running lights. The space between the fleets began to shimmer with suspended matter, transforming the battlefield into something resembling a stellar nebula. "Particles at optimal density around target vessels," Delane reported. "Fusion torches ready for ignition sequence." Revik's finger hovered over the activation control while sweat dripped from his forehead onto the command console. Everything they'd built, everyone they'd sworn to protect, balanced on this moment of desperate innovation. The luminary focusing arrays swiveled toward the colony's main habitat domes, their energy signatures building toward devastating release. "Execute Operation Darkfall," Revik commanded. 47 fusion torches ignited simultaneously, turning millions of tons of metallic particles into brilliant electromagnetic storms that engulfed the luminary fleet like miniature supernovas. The enemy vessels disappeared within cascading waves of interference, while their weapon systems struggled to maintain targeting locks through the chaos. The first luminary beam weapon fired blind, its deadly energy dissipating harmlessly into empty space where precise calculations had expected to find human targets. The luminary beam cut through space like a sword stroke from an angry god, but instead of incinerating the colony's main power station, it carved a glowing trench through empty asteroid debris 2 kilometers off target. Admiral Solith's crystalline voice crackled through the electromagnetic interference, no longer carrying condescending amusement, but sharp-edged frustration that made the translation matrix stutter. Targeting systems experiencing cascade failures. Recalibration sequence interrupted by unknown interference patterns. All vessels' manual targeting protocols now in effect. Revik felt savage satisfaction flood through his chest as he watched enemy beam weapons firing wild shots that illuminated the particle clouds without finding their intended victims. The electromagnetic storms generated by ignited metallic dust created a sphere of chaos around each luminary vessel, transforming their technological superiority into a liability that left them fighting blind. "Launch all frigates," he ordered. "Close engagement range, kinetic weapons only. They can't hit what they can't see clearly." The human fleet erupted from concealed positions behind asteroid formations, 12 vessels designed for system patrol suddenly becoming hunters stalking prey worth 100 times their mass. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the comm system from the lead frigate D, efficient, steady despite the odds. "Visual contact with enemy vessel Alpha. Their hulls glowing like a Christmas tree, but their weapons are tracking 15 degrees behind our actual position." Through the command center's main viewport, Revik watched tracer rounds from human kinetic weapons punch through photonic shielding that had proven impenetrable during the initial encounter. The luminary vessels, designed for long-range precision bombardment, found themselves engaged in brutal close-quarters combat where their advanced targeting computers became worthless. "Direct hits on enemy vessel Beta's weapon arrays," reported Captain Singh from frigate Relentless. "Their return fire is scattered. They're shooting at sensor ghosts instead of actual targets." But the electromagnetic storms that blinded luminary targeting systems also created navigation hazards for human forces. Revik watched frigate Stalwart drift too close to an ignited particle cloud, its hull glowing cherry red as electromagnetic fields overloaded internal systems. Emergency klaxons wailed through the comm channels as Captain Rodriguez fought to regain control. "Hull breach on Stalwart's port section," Torres announced from his rebuilt sensor station. "They're venting atmosphere, but damage control teams are responding." The space between the fleets had become a hellscape of burning particles, electromagnetic lightning, and the twisted wreckage of focusing array components that human kinetic rounds had shattered. Admiral Solith's command vessel, a graceful spear of crystalline architecture, now bore ugly scorch marks where industrial-grade projectiles had punched through its photonic shielding. "Thane, look at this." Delane's voice carried excitement despite the chaos surrounding them. Their photonic systems aren't just disrupted, they're cascading. Each failed targeting attempt creates more electromagnetic noise, which compounds the interference. We're not just blinding them, we're making them blind themselves. Through intercepted communications, Revik could hear Admiral Solith coordinating desperate countermeasures. The alien commander's voice had lost its crystalline perfection, taking on harsh harmonics that suggested stress beyond his species' normal parameters. Engineering teams to primary focusing array, manual calibration of targeting matrices, override all automated systems. "He's adapting faster than we hoped," Walsh observed, studying tactical displays that showed luminary vessels attempting to break free from the electromagnetic storms. "Solith's no fool. He's going to try manual control." Revik activated ship-wide communications, his voice cutting through the chaos of battle. "All vessels converge on the primary focusing array. They're trying to restore manual targeting capability. We can't let them succeed." The human fleet reformed into attack formation despite the electromagnetic interference that made coordination difficult. Visual signals replaced electronic communication as captains maneuvered their vessels through particle clouds thick enough to block sensor readings. Captain Morrison's Defiant led the charge toward the massive focusing array that dominated the center of the luminary formation. "Visual contact with array structure," Morrison reported. "It's the size of a small moon, and they've got repair crews working on the targeting mechanisms. Permission to engage with full kinetic barrage?" "Granted. All vessels, target the array's central hub. Concentrate fire until that thing stops working." The focusing array's crystalline surfaces reflected muzzle flashes from human weapons, creating kaleidoscopic patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Kinetic projectiles designed for asteroid mining punched through alien architecture, sending fragments spinning away into the electromagnetic storms that continued to rage around the battlefield. But Admiral Solith wasn't finished. From his command vessel came a transmission that made Revik's blood freeze. "All vessels, prepare for core overload sequence. Primary focusing array will be sacrificed to generate electromagnetic pulse sufficient to clear all interference patterns. Manual targeting will be restored within 30 minutes. "He's going to overload the entire array?" Delane's face had gone pale as he studied energy readings from the luminary formation. "Thane, that pulse will fry every electronic system within 50 million kilometers. Our ships, the colony, everything." Revik watched as energy signatures from the focusing array began climbing toward critical levels, while Solith's command vessel moved to protect the overloading structure. The alien admiral was gambling everything on one massive pulse that would restore his technological advantages while crippling human resistance capabilities. "All frigates, emergency burn toward the array's central core," Revik ordered. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before that overload sequence completes. Target Solith's command vessel. He's the key to stopping this." Captain Morrison's Defiant accelerated through the electromagnetic chaos, its hull glowing from particle impacts while kinetic weapons blazed at targets barely visible through the interference. "Command vessel is maneuvering to intercept. Their photonic weapons are still online, just degraded accuracy." "Then get close enough that accuracy doesn't matter," Revik replied. "Use whatever you have to. Mining lasers, docking clamps, ramming speed if necessary. That overload cannot complete." Through the main viewport, he could see the focusing array's core beginning to pulse with ominous regularity, each flash brighter than the last. Energy cascades ran along its crystalline framework like lightning captured in geometric patterns. Admiral Solith, a sea vessel, positioned itself between the array and attacking human forces, its remaining weapons creating barriers of coherent light despite targeting system failures. The electromagnetic storms that had given humanity its initial advantage now worked against them as communications degraded and sensor readings became unreliable. Frigate after frigate disappeared into clouds of burning particles, their fate unknown until they emerged from the interference with battle damage or didn't emerge at all. Stalwart has lost main propulsion, Torres reported. Defiant's taken multiple hits but is still advancing. The others... He paused, checking readings that flickered between coherent data and static. I can't get clear sensor locks through this interference. Revik felt the weight of command pressing against his chest like atmospheric pressure as he watched the focusing array's overload sequence approach critical threshold. Everything depended on human ships fighting their way through electromagnetic chaos to prevent an explosion that would doom the colony and everyone in it. Admiral Soleth's command vessel blazed with defensive fire as Captain Morrison's Defiant closed to point-blank range, both ships disappearing into a particle cloud that sparkled with weapons discharge and electromagnetic lightning. The focusing array's core pulsed once more, building toward the release that would decide the fate of 50,000 human lives. The focusing array's core pulsed with the rhythm of a dying star's heartbeat, each flash casting Admiral Soleth's command vessel in stark relief against the electromagnetic chaos that had consumed the battlefield. Revik gripped the controls of mining vessel Prometheus, its hull scarred from passage through particle storms and its industrial systems jury-rigged for combat operations that would have horrified the original designers. All remaining vessels, concentrate fire on Soleth's ship, Revik commanded through the crackling comm system. That array overload completes in 7 minutes, and when it does, every electronic system in this system gets fried back to the Stone Age. Through Prometheus's reinforced viewport, designed to withstand direct stellar radiation during deep-core mining operations, Revik could see Captain Morrison's Defiant trading fire with Soleth's vessel at point-blank range. Both ships moved like wounded animals, their maneuvers dictated by failing systems and desperate necessity rather than tactical doctrine. Thane, the array's energy buildup is accelerating, Delane's voice transmitted from the colony, strain evident despite the electromagnetic interference. Whatever Soleth's doing to that core, he's pushing it beyond safe parameters. If that thing explodes instead of creating a controlled pulse, the blast takes out everything within 10 million kilometers, Revik finished, including his own fleet. The implication hit him like a physical blow. Admiral Soleth wasn't planning to restore his tactical advantages through electromagnetic pulse. He was preparing to sacrifice everything, including his own forces, to deny humanity its victory. The alien commander had chosen mutual destruction over admitting defeat. Prometheus shuddered as Revik pushed the mining vessel's engines past redline specifications, closing distance with Soleth's command ship, while debris from the focusing array rained around them like metallic hail. The industrial vessel's cutting beam, designed to slice through asteroid cores, locked onto the crystalline architecture of the enemy ship's weapon arrays. Visual contact with Soleth's vessel, Revik reported. His photonic weapons are still functional but firing wild. I'm seeing massive energy fluctuations, his power cores unstable. Admiral Soleth's voice cut through the static, no longer carrying crystalline perfection but harsh with desperation. Human Commander, your primitive tactics have achieved temporary disruption, but ultimate victory remains with the Empire. This system will serve as a monument to the folly of resistance. The only monument here will be your wreckage, Revik replied, feeling savage satisfaction as Prometheus's mining laser carved through Soleth's defensive shielding. You came here expecting easy prey. Instead, you found predators. The two vessels circled each other through the electromagnetic storm like ancient gladiators in an arena of burning particles. Soleth's ship, a graceful spear of alien architecture, bore ugly wounds where industrial equipment had punched through advanced defensive systems. Prometheus, built for durability rather than elegance, showed scorch marks from photonic weapons, but continued fighting with the stubbornness of human engineering. His targeting systems are completely blind, Revik observed, watching enemy beam weapons fire at positions his ship had vacated seconds earlier. But so are mine. This comes down to visual targeting and reflexes. The focusing array's core pulsed again, brighter and more unstable with each cycle. Through the particle storms, Revik could see other human vessels engaging the remaining luminary fleet, but the outcome of those battles mattered less than stopping the overload sequence that would annihilate everyone within range of the explosion. Range, 200 meters and closing, Revik announced to his skeleton crew. Prepare for boarding operations. Sir, we're a mining vessel, protested Engineer Yates from her jury-rigged weapons station. We don't have boarding equipment. We've got industrial cutting tools and vac suits rated for stellar radiation, Revik replied, manually lining up Prometheus's docking clamps with Solith's command section. Sometimes primitive works better than sophisticated. The collision sent shockwaves through both vessels as magnetic clamps designed for securing asteroid fragments locked onto crystalline hull plating. Atmosphere vented from breach points while emergency seals struggled to contain the damage. Revik suited up in his mining gear, the familiar weight of industrial tools replacing military weapons as he prepared for direct confrontation. Breaching their command section now, he reported, using a thermal lance to cut through alien architecture that sparked and hissed under the industrial tools' focused heat. Solith still alive. I can see him through the breach. Admiral Solith stood in the wreckage of his command center, his crystalline form flickering with energy discharges as damaged photonic systems failed throughout his ship. The alien commander clutched a control device that pulsed in synchronization with the focusing array's overload sequence. Your victory is illusion, human, Solith declared, his voice distorted by failing translation systems. The Empire spans 73 systems. The loss of one fleet means nothing compared to the lesson your destruction will teach other species. Maybe, Revik replied, advancing through the breach with his thermal lance raised like a sword. But you won't be around to see it. The alien commander triggered his photonic sidearm, but the weapon's beam dispersed harmlessly against Revik's mining suit. Industrial shielding designed to protect workers from stellar radiation proved equally effective against failing alien technology. Solith's crystalline features showed something that might have been surprise, as his most advanced weapon failed to penetrate primitive human protective equipment. Revik's thermal lance punched through Solith's chest, the industrial cutting tool designed for asteroid mining proving devastatingly effective against alien physiology. Admiral Solith collapsed, his form flickering like a failing light as the overload control device tumbled from dying fingers. Overload sequence disengaged, Revik reported, crushing the alien control device under his boots. Array Re is destabilizing without guidance systems. Through the breached command center's viewports, he watched the massive focusing array tear itself apart in a cascade of secondary explosions. Without Solith's manual control, the overloading core consumed the structure from within, turning the luminary's most powerful weapon into spectacular but harmless fireworks. The remaining enemy vessels, their command structure destroyed and their advanced systems crippled by ongoing electromagnetic interference, drifted helplessly through particle storms that continued to blind their sensors and disrupt their weapons. All human vessels, report status, Revik commanded as he made his way back to Prometheus through the wreckage of Solith's ship. Defiant operational but heavily damaged, came Morrison's reply. We've lost 3 frigates, but the surviving luminary vessels are requesting communication. They want to negotiate. Revik looked out at the battlefield where burning particles still created aurora displays around crippled alien warships. The electromagnetic storms that had given humanity its victory continued to rage, trapping the survivors in a prison of their own making. Patch them through, Revik ordered. Let's see what an empire sounds like when it's ready to surrender. The silence that followed the focusing array's destruction felt heavier than the electromagnetic storms that had raged through the system for the past 6 hours. Revik stood in Prometheus's command center, his mining suit still reeking of ozone and molten metal, while debris from Solith's command vessel drifted past the viewports like metallic snow against the stars. Commander Revik, This is Captain Nethys of the luminary vessel Radiant Dawn. The voice that emerged from the communication system lacked the crystalline perfection that had characterized Admiral Soleth's transmissions. Instead, it carried the exhausted weight of someone who had had an empire's invincibility shatter in a single engagement. We request immediate ceasefire and negotiation of withdrawal terms. Revik exchanged glances with Engineer Yates, who had taken over communications duties after their regular operator suffered injuries during the boarding action. The woman's weathered face showed the same disbelief he felt. 3 hours ago, they had been facing annihilation by technologically superior forces, and now those same enemies were asking for mercy. Captain Nethys, you'll forgive me if I'm not immediately trustful of luminary intentions, Revik replied. Your admiral made it clear that surrender wasn't an option he was offering us. Admiral Soleth represented old imperial doctrine, Nethys responded. His death changes the strategic calculation. The Empire has lost its primary battle fleet and most advanced focusing array technology in this engagement. Continued hostilities would serve no purpose. Through the main viewport, Revik could see the 3 surviving luminary vessels maintaining position within the electromagnetic storms, their sleek hulls scarred by weapons that had never been designed for space combat. Mining lasers, industrial cutting beams, and kinetic projectiles meant for asteroid processing had reduced the galaxy's most feared fleet to drifting wrecks, begging for safe passage home. Patch me through to Colony Command, Revik ordered. Delane and Walsh need to hear this. The engineering facility's main screen flickered to life, showing Marcus Delane's soot-streaked face and Patricia Walsh's grim expression. Behind them, teams of colonists worked frantically to repair systems damaged during the preliminary bombardment, their movements carrying the focused intensity of people who had stared death in the face and chosen to keep fighting. Marcus, what's our tactical situation? Revik asked. The electromagnetic storms are dissipating, but slowly, Delane reported. We've got maybe 12 hours before their advanced systems come back online. After that, any agreements we make need to stick through diplomatic channels rather than tactical advantage. Walsh leaned forward, her expression calculating. Thane, we've intercepted communications between the surviving luminary vessels. They're not just worried about getting home, they're terrified of explaining this defeat to their empire. Apparently losing a battle is something that hasn't happened to them in over 2 centuries. Captain Nethys, Revik addressed the alien commander. What exactly are you offering? Complete withdrawal from human-claimed systems, 20-year non-aggression pact, and shared navigation data for safe passage around your territory, came the immediate reply. In exchange, we request safe passage to the edge of this system and guarantee that details of our defeat remain classified. Revik felt bitter laughter rising in his throat. You want us to keep quiet about beating you? What's in that for us? Commander, consider the strategic implications, Nethys continued. The Luminary Empire has maintained control over 73 systems through technological superiority and psychological intimidation. If word spreads that human industrial tactics can neutralize our advantages, every conquered species will attempt similar resistance. The Empire will respond with escalating force levels that make Admiral Soleth's fleet appear insignificant. He's got a point, Walsh interjected through the comlink. We won this engagement through surprise and innovation, but now they know what to expect. Next time they'll come prepared for electromagnetic warfare. Delane's image nodded agreement. Thane, we need time to develop these countermeasures properly, maybe share them with other species what have suffered under luminary expansion. A 20-year breathing space gives us the opportunity to level the playing field across the galaxy. Revik considered the proposal while watching reconstruction crews work to repair damage from the preliminary bombardment. The colony's main habitat domes bore scorch marks from near-miss beam strikes, reminders of how close they had come to complete annihilation. 50,000 people had trusted him to keep them alive, and somehow, impossibly, he had succeeded. Counter-proposal, Captain Nethys, Revik finally responded. 30-year non-aggression pact, immediate withdrawal of luminary forces from 3 specific systems that we'll designate, and technology transfer agreements for any species requesting electromagnetic warfare countermeasures. Commander, you are asking us to abandon strategic territories and arm potential enemies, Nethys protested. I'm asking you to consider the alternative, Revik replied coldly. We've demonstrated that human industrial capacity can neutralize your technological advantages. How many other species possess similar capabilities if they're given the knowledge and time to implement these tactics? The communication channel remained silent for several minutes while the surviving luminary commanders consulted among themselves. Through intercepted transmissions, Revik could hear heated discussions about acceptable losses, imperial response protocols, and the unprecedented nature of negotiating from a position of defeat. Terms accepted, Nethys finally announced. We will begin withdrawal immediately upon transmission of designated system coordinates and non-aggression pact documentation. 6 months later, Admiral Thane Revik stood in the expanded command center of Kepler 442b's new Colonial Defense Initiative headquarters, watching construction crews complete the final installations on Electromes. Magnetic warfare research facilities, asteroid mining platforms had been converted into weapons testing ranges, where teams of engineers from a dozen different species worked to adapt human industrial tactics to their own technological bases. Admiral, we've got another delegation requesting technical consultation, reported Commander Torres, who had accepted promotion to head the initiative's intelligence division. The Kytherian Assembly wants to know if our electromagnetic countermeasures work against luminary occupation forces in their home system. Schedule them for next week, Revik replied, and make sure they understand that we're not selling weapons. We're teaching them to build their own. Through the observation windows, he could see the particle dispensers that had been installed throughout the system, ready to recreate the electromagnetic storms that had given humanity its victory. But more importantly, he could see transport ships from 18 different civilizations arriving to collect technical data, industrial specifications, and training materials that would spread electromagnetic warfare capabilities throughout the galaxy. Marcus Delane approached, his engineer's coveralls replaced by the formal uniform of the Colonial Defense Initiative's Chief Technology Officer. Thane, the latest intelligence reports are interesting reading. 7 luminary-controlled systems have experienced spontaneous uprisings in the past month, all featuring suspiciously similar electromagnetic warfare tactics. Spontaneous, Revik repeated with satisfaction. I'm sure the Luminary Empire is having trouble explaining that to their conquered populations. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Captain Nethys appeared on screen, his crystalline features showing signs of stress that hadn't been present during their original negotiations. Admiral Revik, I must protest the activity is occurring throughout luminary space. The technological transfers you have facilitated are causing system-wide rebellions. Captain, the 30-year non-aggression pact specifically prohibits luminary forces from entering human space, Revik replied. It says nothing about what happens when other species independently develop countermeasures to your occupation techniques. These uprisings threaten imperial stability across multiple sectors, Nethys continued. Perhaps we could negotiate modifications to our agreement. The agreement stands as written, Revik interrupted. Your empire had 2 centuries to consider the consequences of conquest through technological intimidation. The galaxy is simply adjusting to new realities. After terminating the transmission, Revik returned to the observation windows where the lights of approaching transport vessels created new constellations against the stars. Each ship carried representatives of civilizations that had suffered under luminary expansion, all seeking the knowledge that could transform industrial infrastructure into weapons of liberation. Sir, the latest construction reports show completion of Phase 3 expansion, Commander Walsh reported, joining him at the observation deck. Kepler 442b is now the largest military research and training facility outside Earth space. 23 species have established permanent liaison offices, and industrial output has increased by 400% since the battle. Revik nodded, feeling the weight of transformation that had changed everything about their small mining colony. The 50,000 people who had faced extinction 6 months ago now lived in a thriving hub of interstellar cooperation, their industrial expertise sought by civilizations across the galaxy. Patricia, what's our assessment of the long-term strategic picture? The Luminary Empire is contracting for the first time in their recorded history, she replied with satisfaction. 41 systems have achieved independence using electromagnetic warfare variants, and their remaining territories are experiencing increasing unrest. Intelligence suggests they're developing countermeasures, but each adaptation we develop spreads to their enemies faster than they can respond. Through the viewport, another transport ship approached the orbital docking facilities, its hull bearing the insignia of a species Revik didn't recognize. Soon, representatives of that civilization would join the growing coalition of former luminary subjects who had learned that technological superiority could be overcome through industrial innovation and desperate courage. The universe had indeed learned what darkness looked like when humans chose to dim the light of their oppressors, and that lesson was spreading farther than Admiral Solith could ever have imagined. If this industrial warfare masterpiece left you craving more human ingenuity against impossible odds, smash that subscribe button. Now we want to hear from you. If you had to defend your colony using only industrial equipment against a technologically superior alien fleet, what creative weapon would you improvise from mining or manufacturing tools? Drop your most ingenious battle plan in the comments. We read every single one and love seeing your tactical creativity. Thanks for joining us at Stellar HFY, where humans turn the impossible into inevitable victory. See you in the next story.